Amigos, recuerdan que estábamos hablando sobre los dueños de Jack Daniels, de Woodford y de Tequila Herradura, que son los mismos. Estos señores están aquí, se llaman Brown-Forman. Y también tienen otra destilería que es como su centro de operaciones, que se llama Old Forester. Y de aquí salen todos los barriles, todas las barricas donde se van a añejar los destilados. Vamos a visitarla, está aquí en el centro de Louisville, en el Bourbon District. El nombre de Old Forester viene de un doctor de la guerra civil que era amigo del dueño del señor Brown. De ahí tomó su apellido y también lo recetaba en su farmacia. Como les había comentado también en el video todo sobre el whisky, Old Forester es de los pocos bourbons que mantiene su nombre con la Y en vez de la terminación EI. Esto es porque los dueños también venían de Escocia, algo parecido a lo de Maker's Mark también. Old Forester también es parte del Bourbon Trail, así que vamos a continuar con estampando nuestros pasaportes. Y ellos fueron los primeros que embotellaron Bourbon en Estados Unidos.
13, one more.
Extra
Okay,
one.
cool. Thank you all.
Thank you.
You're going to be stuck with me for about the next 75 minutes or so. The last little bit of that, I become much more tolerable. You have bourbon in your hands, makes me a whole lot easier to listen to. So I look forward to that. Before I get too far into anything, I always like to ask, do any of you all know why we're located in this building nowadays? Because the building is pretty significant to us, but I always like to ask. Anybody have any ideas? Sounds about right. I didn't even know why we were here until I started working here. I'm from Louisville, so it makes sense. But it seems kind of awkward for me to ask a question like that and not answer it right away. But that's exactly what I'm doing. Because I have a photograph I'll show you later on that serves as more proof as to why we're here. So just kind of keep in mind that there's some significance. But the building we're standing in was originally constructed back in 1857. At the time, it served as a barrel warehouse for other distillers in the area to age bourbon barrels. So as long as this building's been around, it's had some involvement with our industry, which is just kind of a cool side note. But as Old Forester, we didn't start to find any significance until 1870. That's when a young pharmaceutical sales rep by the name of George Garvin Brown saw the need for a product on the market of consistent quality. And the market I'm referencing was the, at the time, medicinal bourbon market. Because believe it or not, back in the day, bourbon was actually considered to be a medicine. I still consider it one very much so. If I'm ever feeling kind of a groggy waking up in the morning, a sip of bourbon usually helps. But back in the day, say you were a shop owner and you got your bourbon shipment beginning of every month. But you were at the end of the month, you started running low on the bourbon in that barrel. You didn't want to place an express order, express shipment or anything like that. So you would start to add things to that barrel. Common ingredients that were added, prune juice, cherry juice, just any kind of juice, flavored juice in general, honey, molasses, things like that. Not all whiskey is bourbon. There are 5 requirements you have to meet to be considered bourbon. Any of you all know what those requirements are?
The corn, 51%.
Yeah, exactly right. So, for bourbon, our mash, which is this right here, it's a mash bill taken as like a recipe, it has to consist of at least 51% corn. Any more than that, it's totally fine. Any less than that, it will never be bourbon. So percentage of corn is a pretty big deal. Another requirement, all of our alcohol has to be aged in a newly charred oak container. So it's a one and done barrel process for our products. If you dump bourbon into a barrel, it has to be a new one. If that bourbon leaves that barrel, you cannot then use that same barrel for a bourbon ever again. A lot of times they're sent to Ireland and Scotland where they be used for Irish or Scotch whiskey over and over again for the rest of their lifetime. But for bourbon, one and done. So we're currently distilling off our mash, turning it into a very rough, purified grain alcohol. But when we ferment our mash, we don't target a certain number of days. We instead target a specific alcohol concentration. So only once our mash reaches 10% alcohol by volume will we ever drain it off, as you see here. Usually it's going to take us about 3 to 5 days to accumulate that percentage. And over the course of those days, the mash is going to change fairly drastically. This right here. This is where the second distillation actually takes place. Let's be followed up with our main focal point, our 44-foot column still. Appropriately named Big Penny was produced right here in Louisville at a place called Vendome Copper and Brass Works, and she'll end up producing about 100,000 proof gallons annually. to also promote a wide variety of flavor in that barrel. Because depending on where trees grow, different grain patterns emerge, and those flavors are enhanced during maturation. Every single barrel ends up different. So if you think about it, a single barrel is almost like a fingerprint. There will never be two that taste exactly alike. It's kind of a cool thing. But to start off our barrel production, our coopers, which we'll meet here in just a second, we'll take about 29 to 31 of these staves, and they're going to start to assemble them at our raising station. This is, without a doubt, one of the most important parts of a barrel production, because for our barrels, we never use any form of nails or glues to hold our barrels together, in a way to create a solid base around the bottom of that ring. Now this again is the raising station, so it makes sense that we raise the barrel here, but this isn't going to be a standard run-of-the-mill practice. It's not like something you just know and can do mindlessly. This is really more of an art form because all these staves vary in width. We don't have a standardized shape of a stave, because if we do, we're going to waste wood. So the wood is here just to shape it. That's all it actually does. By the time it's unloaded, it's going to be that traditional barrel shape, and that's going to be brought down to this next machine. So if you want to come down here with me. This machine is one of the cool reasons to own your own cooperage, because you can do things like this. Ultimately, what this machine is a giant toaster oven, because we toast all of our barrels before we actually char them. So if we take a second to think about it, why is it that bread and toast taste different? They don't taste exactly alike, because toast has condensed sugar on it. That's why it has a little bit of a sweeter flavor. That's ultimately what we're doing with our toaster. By toasting the barrel before we char it, we take those sugars that remain throughout the staves, we bring them closer to the surface and condense them. That way when we char our barrels, we're not just burning wood, we're caramelizing all that sugar too. So this is going to enhance that caramel, vanilla, butterscotchy note that's known in bourbon, because we're utilizing more of that sugar per stave. So the barrels are dropped around an indirect heating element to receive a light to moderate toasting before being unloaded and set aside. We'll then allow the sugars to solidify and lock into place. But why would I show you when I have a couple people here celebrating something today? I remember somebody celebrating their anniversary, right? Right? Yeah. We're going to push this button in over about half a second, let it go, send the cross fired up, push it, so whenever you are ready. Yep. So as it moves into that permeated layer, it makes its way into that condensed caramelized sugar layer. It's going to pick up all that flavor. So the barrel is essentially a mellowing and a flavoring container. Now after it's charred, it's brought down further to receive a quickness of water. It's going to stop the charring process, allowing more sugars to be retained on the backside. From here, it is unloaded and set right back here. This is where the barrels are going to cool off before they're handled furthermore. So if you want to come up and take a look, you are more than welcome to do so, but please do not touch the barrels. These are experimental barrels. We don't want outside. Along the very top and bottom edge of the barrel to create a spot to accommodate that barrel head. So to give you a better depiction, this is a brogue stave. These little notches were there previously. It's exactly what this machine does. Once before this, rolled over to our heading station. That's where Josh or Austin will take a barrel head. These are all wide open, starting from the same degree as the barrel. The edge of the paper to it, which is that glue that's created. We'll beat it a couple times with a hammer, and it eventually pops itself into place.
Quick question. Well, I know that you own the Tequila Herradura in Mexico. Are you making the barrels for them over here, or
not in this facility, but they are made in Kentucky. So we have our main production facility, which is our BFC, our Brown-Forman cooperage. It's over by our main Old Forester production facility, and they produce barrels for Old Forester, Woodford Reserve, Jack Daniels, our tequilas, El Jimador, Pepe Lopez, Herradura, and pretty much all of our products nationwide and internationally. Now we do have another cooperage in Decatur, Alabama that makes barrels just for Jack Daniels, appropriately named the Jack Daniels Cooperage.
Este corredor tiene la barrica quemada por dentro, la madera quemada por dentro, como charco.
Now, this is, of course, our Maturation Warehouse. Now, to those of you that have been on other bourbon distillery tours, you may find that this looks quite a bit different and it feels quite a bit different. It isn't just a barn out in the rural parts of Kentucky. Warehouse where we catch fire, we're not burning down just a barn, we're essentially burning down a city block. So everything has to be fireproof, blast-proof. We actually have no idea what's going to happen in this warehouse because this is our only temperature-controlled warehouse. So it's going to stay about this temperature year-round. You're not getting that pressure variation, so you're not forcing the bourbon in and out. It's just kind of sitting there on that surface of the barrel, soaking in a little bit just because of the way wood is. So this could be some brand new Old Forester in the near future, or it could be really bad. We don't know yet because this is all one big experiment for us. Now the oldest barrel we have that we've made here is the one right down there with the signatures. That was filled on May 22nd of 2018. So we aged at least 4 years, so this time next year we'll know what that actually ends up being like. Into a bottle, seal it, label it, and prep it for distribution. So if you want to take a look, you're more than welcome to. We are going to make our way down. They're filled with 4 different products. I'll talk about what those are here in just a second. But you may notice on that napkin you have a copper shot. That Majeska, or the wrapped item, that is a Kentucky treat. That is actually named after a Polish actress that used to perform at the acting studio in the 20s and 30s by the name of Helena Majeska. It is a marshmallow dipped in bourbon-infused caramel, dipped in chocolate with a little pinch of salt. Third product seems to be one of our guest favorites, and that's the Old Forester 1910 Old Fine Whiskey, 93 proof bourbon. Fourth and final one is my personal favorite. It's the 1920 Prohibition style 115 proof bourbon. Okay. So if you ever hear people refer to like the Old Forester Whiskey World lineup, that is what we have right here. All these dates are historically significant to us. I'll talk about each and every one in a little more detail as we go through it. Okay. Now, with the very first one, we're going to do this one a little bit differently. So I do want to illustrate to you all that there's more than one way to enjoy bourbon. I have friends out there that collect bourbon just because they think the bottle looks really cool. They like the idea of the product being like only made in the US kind of thing. So we can look at visuals with the bourbon. I have friends that collect them because they like the way they smell. They don't drink, they like the way alcohol smells, different products, different areas. So we can then nose it, and then of course we'll taste it as we go through them, okay? So first we're going to do each and every one. We're going to have you go through. I'll let you all kind of have that action. All right. So we're going to start off by grabbing the 1870. And first thing we're going to do is, again, check our visuals. Best to a light. We're going to turn it on side, and we're going to look through that. When drinking bourbon, you always want to make sure that it is crystal clear in appearance. You never want to have a fog or a haze to a bourbon. If you do not drink it. What that means is either the glass was dirty, somebody put something in it, or that bourbon is starting to oxidize. So bourbon, if exposed to air too long, will go through some chemical reactions. It's going to become much more bitter and kind of stale tasting. So if you ever drink a cloudy bourbon, you'll find out real quick that it's probably not the way it should taste. All right? Another thing you can do visually is check the color. You always want to make sure your bourbon matches the proof based off color. Typically, the darker bourbon is, the higher the proof, because less water was added to it to cut that bourbon down to whatever proof it was. One more visual we can do, and that is, if you've ever done a wine tasting, it's going to feel fairly familiar, that's checking your legs. You take that glass and roll it around, you notice that bourbon clings to the glass, and you keep rolling it, and then eventually stop, you're going to see these little tiny runs forming out. Again, these are referred to as your legs. Now with bourbon, they're a good visual indicator of both oil concentration and alcohol concentration. Because typically, the slower the legs are to form, the higher oil there is. That's oil from the grain and from the barrel. This gives you that buttery, kind of silky feeling on the palate. And the skinnier they are when they form, the higher the alcohol concentration. Again, ethanol is less dense than water and other liquids, so it's going to form very thinly and roll down much quicker. Exhale out of your mouth is pulling that vapor from the back of the sinuses onto your tongue and out across your tongue. So not only does it give you a much more keen sense of smell, it allows some people to somewhat taste the bourbon before they ever even try it. So if you ever see people at a bourbon bar, just at a bar in general, like smelling like that, they're not being contentious, they're not doing it to look funny, they're doing it to get a better idea of what they're trying, or they actually taste it. It's going to go down with just a little more intensity. That's because oils and alcohol in a bourbon are fairly complicated for our bodies to process quickly. So the first initial reaction of your body is to detect the most prominent thing, which is that alcohol. That's why a lot of times you take that first sip, people are like, whoo, kind of catch you off guard. Give your body a couple seconds to interpret what's really there. Then whenever you're ready, go ahead and try it a second time. Odds are, the second time around, it's going to be a little bit softer. You're going to have just a little bit more of that flavor. And you all can go through this one as you wish. If you want to check the visuals, you can. If you want to nose it, you can. Or if you want to dive right into the tasting, you are more than welcome to do so. But as you go through this one, if you notice any big difference, you can cut me off and just let me know what differences you're getting. Because again, I kind of want to know what you all pick it up on. Now this one to me, if this was a cologne, I'd probably wear it every day. There's something about that smell. It has like almost like a woodsy-er kind of floral smell to it. I think it's really, really pleasant. Be kind of a bad situation if I ever got pulled over. It's different. But the production of this product was initially a pretty big deal. Because back in 1897, the government passed the first Consumer Protection Act for alcohol, referred to as the Bottled and Bonded Act. So if you ever see what it says on a bottle, it says bonded, it follows that same direction that it now is. So what the Bonded Act required of us, if we wanted to stay in business and serve a bonded product, was that all alcohol had to be produced by one distiller. So what that means is like we could take old Forester barrels and marry them with Woodford Reserve barrels to serve it. That would not be okay. It had to be distilled at a facility, aged in that warehouse, which is a bonded warehouse, for at least 4 years, and blended with barrels of the same distillation season of the same year, bottled at 100 proof. Take bourbon from the actual original barrel, dump it and place it into a used barrel. Technically, that's a used container. It's no longer bourbon, but it's a double oak whiskey. So we have to use 2 new barrels for this product. So it's going to emphasize that barrel note we picked up on that hallway upstairs. Caramel, coffee, vanilla, butterscotch, all those flavors are probably going to stand out a little bit more with this product. So you're going to go ahead and nose it, check the visuals, taste it, you're more than welcome to. This one is the one I suggest adding just a couple of drops of water to after you try it. Because with that double amount of barrel contact, you're increasing those barrel oils, so it's going to alter that flavor profile even more so. Now the reason we call this in 1910 is because this is what we made in 1910. Not on purpose, but by accident. So in 1910, there was a fire on our bottling line in this facility. It prevented us from bottling our products properly. So George, having bourbon that was dumped, filtered, proofed, ready to go, but had no way to put it in a bottle, he didn't want to waste that bourbon, so he placed it into a second brand new charred oak barrel, let it sit in that barrel until the line was operational. After that time was up, the bottling line was up and running, he dumped that barrel, realized it had a much darker color, it smelled a lot differently, and it had a much different flavor profile. They didn't know at the time, but they accidentally gave way to what we now refer to as double oaking. Now, we may not have been the very first one to double oak, but we were the first documented case of double oak. Now, at the time, 1910, you didn't want to come to the market with some brand new innovative bourbon or some kind of whiskey. people were still very skeptical of this kind of products. So instead of marketing this as a double oak, we marketed it as an old fine whiskey. So the tagline comes from for it.
So if it's double oak, means the time is twice as well, kind of 8 years instead of 4? Or?
Not necessarily. So we'll age 4 to 6 years in that first barrel. We'll dump it, we'll filter it, we don't proof it. We'll go to that second barrel until it tastes the way that it should. So some of them might take 6 months, some of them might take 8, 9, 10 months, but we'll pour it that second go around when it tastes the way it should. That way when we mix all those together, it's going to create a more consistent flavor. The biggest thing with our products is every time so you have 1897, it tastes the exact same. That's what the point where master tasters are doing their job is to make sure it's the same with different products.
Okay.
It's going to help alleviate a lot of that kind of tingling in the back of the throat. And one reason I know this is my wife is not a bourbon drinker, but I always have that in the house. So she always wants to try it. She always ends up coughing because her initial reaction is to take that sip and like swallow and then inhale right afterwards. You're pulling an alcohol vapor off your palate down into your lungs, but then you cough to expel it back out. So you inhale first, take your sip, you swallow, then exhale, and it keeps that alcohol vapor from going back down. Gives you a little bit of a softer finish, and normally a little more aromatic, which is good too. Now to me, this smells like nothing but maple syrup, but you all make it something different, but that's literally the only thing I smell with this.
Is everyone a different match? What
Yeah,
batch?
they're all different batches.
No good.
Now, it may take 2 sips to kind of reacclimate your palate to this, because again, it is a pretty big jump in alcohol from 93 to 115. But I like this one a lot because it has a rich, indulgent flavor to it too, but it also has kind of that light-hearted, like floral, like citrusy flavor. I get a lot of lemony kind of flavors on this too, but again, that could just be me. If you don't get that, that's fine. But then you get that real nice, like subtle tingling after you swallow it. It's actually alcohol evaporating from the surface of your palate, kind of coat your mouth a little more evenly, so that the finish lasts just a little bit longer.
Vanilla, caramel, yeah, citric, orange.
But I've been up here yakking for a while. Is there anyone that stood out to you all? If you had to pick one of the favorites, could you do that?
I like the double oak.
I like the double oak too.
A lot of people seem to really like it pecan. And right here, so it's like a really bluish, like kind of dessert bourbon. A lot of the indulgent flavors to it. Makes a lot of sense.
Viajeros, no vengan aquí con el estómago vacío porque el bourbon está bravo. Pero bueno, la
Just
verdad.
you guys.
We're going to head out of the room. I have one more thing to show you before we actually call it a day. So as far as the tour goes, it's going to do it for me. So I will go and say thank you all for coming in. It's been a pleasure having you all with me. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Great tour. Thank you. Viajeros, vamos saliendo de Old Forester. El tour está muy bueno. Es el único lugar donde van a encontrar barricas, que estén haciendo barricas en producción, que las quemen. Todo eso está muy padre, porque al menos yo nunca había visto y no sabía que aquí las tenían. Pero la verdad es que Old Forester no es de nuestros favoritos, no es un top shelf. Como lo llaman en Estados Unidos, hasta los Bourbon, que son muy buenos, le llaman top shelf. Yo creo que es algo que puedes mezclar nada más. No es lo peor que puedas probar, pero es un Bourbon que puedes usar para hacer un trago, para hacer una mezcla, un mix, cóctel.
Pero vengan a ver el tour, tal vez a ustedes les guste. Tal vez la parte favorita de lo que probamos son los chocolates, o tal vez por eso nada más vendrían. Y por la barrica.
Nos llevamos chocolates y nos llevamos también un prendedor para un saquito coqueto.
Viajeros, como siempre, muchas gracias por ver este video. Si no se han suscrito, suscríbanse al canal, den un like si les ha gustado y compartan con los viajeros a quienes pueda servir esta información.